What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest. Your host, Matt Johnson here. Wow, what a victory for the Bulls in Portland with a 122-121 victory on a clutch buzzer-beating three by Vooch, his second clutch three of such sorts this year. The last one coming at the United Center against the Sixers in that monster game. This game had everything. The Bulls with multiple double-digit leads. The Blazers coming storming back in the fourth quarter. The Bulls kept fighting, ultimately knocking down the game-winning shot to close out the four-game road trip. 2-2. Another night with no Trey Jones. That was definitely tough for Chicago. Certainly brought its challenges. Looking at this one and looking at some of the numbers from an interesting first quarter in this one from the jump, Bulls took 24 shots, 15 of them three-pointers. The Bulls bench scored 14 of the 28 points in the first quarter. Again, the bench starting off strong like they have so many times this year. Portland, second in the NBA in offensive rebounds, grabbed 6 offensive boards in the first quarter. Blazers, again, with a 29-28 lead after the first period there. A guy who stood out to me with the very solid minutes in this one in the first half, Dalen Terry. Now, this guy, building off a very strong performance in Denver, one of his better first-half performances against Portland, and better first-half performances of the year for him, coming off solid minutes he had in the Mile High City as well. So he had a very good couple of games here, in particular a very strong first half. The Bulls would take a 62-58 lead into the halftime locker room. Portland, jumping into the third quarter here, would go on a ridiculous 19-2 run in the second half. They'd take a 118-116 lead after the Bulls were up 21 with 9:16 left in the game. I mean, it was crazy with the Bulls having that lead. You'd think that they could just salt that one away with 9:15 left, 9:16 left in the game. They dubbed them 21 points. They're up that much with that little time remaining. Then things started to get sticky. The Blazers went on a crazy run, and they started to put together possessions with scoring, and then they would get stops and would string a lot of those together, ultimately taking this lead late in the game. The turning point in this one, though, a very crazy turn, was a massive challenge with 26.7 seconds left in the fourth. Down 3, it looked like minimal contact in a play where Denny Advia was called for a foul on Kobe. The challenge would be successful, and they then jumped it up. It was minimal contact, but I thought that this one would stand. It went the Blazers' way. It was Modest Buzelis against Klingon. So obviously a huge jump ball there. Modest would win the jump ball over Klingon, but Kobe White threw the ball away. This was a crazy sequence, not only to win that jump over Klingon, which was hard to do in itself, but then Kobe with that turnover from the jump there. They would have to foul. Jeremy Grant would split a pair of free throws with 8.2 seconds left, missing the front end of the two. This was a break for Chicago. Then, you could go down and try and hit a 2 to tie the game, but this certainly wasn't the plan for Chicago. Kobe White would drive the lane with 8.2 left, find Vooch in the corner. He was wide open. It was an unbelievable pass. He had to thread it because there was a defender there, but Vooch would get off that game-winning three and drill it at the buzzer, capping off a 2-1 West Coast trip and a 2-2 road trip overall for the Chicago Bulls. What an exhilarating victory to carry into this weekend and a couple important games at the United Center. What a game. This game had everything. The Cardiac Bulls do it again. They are, at this young season, showing that they are resilient and winning these late games. And they have that clutch bone, which they've shown a couple times now. So speaking of clutch games, the Bulls are now 6-4 in what are deemed as clutch games this year in the NBA. They're tied for the third most, they're tied for third in the NBA for most clutch games played, and they've been in a lot of tight ones early on here. Looking at some of the box score in a tight game, none other than Nikola Vucevic with the game-winning three at 27 points, 8 boards. He was 5 of 9 from deep. Obviously, the game winner at the buzzer, one of those 5 threes. Super important shot for this team. Kobe White, 25 points, 7 assists, including that dish to Vooch. What a monster pass that was, finding him for the game winner. The Bulls bench does it again. Their clutch continue to come up clutch. Speaking of clutch games, they had 60 bench points in this one. That's the third straight game with 60 or more bench points. So this bench continues to dominate, and it's really fun to watch because night in, night out, you expect contributions from a bunch of different guys, and different guys are stepping up, even with some guys out short. When the Bulls are shorthanded, Trey Jones out of this one once again. The Bulls had a season high 21 threes in this one, really, putting together the deep shot there. Bulls had 36 assists in this contest as well. Looking at the monster player in Portland, and there was a guy I previewed coming in, Deni Avdija, another triple-double for him. He continues to be a monster for them. He's having an all-star caliber start to the season. Donovan Clingan, double-double, 17 points, 21 rebounds. Clingan was huge down the stretch when the Blazers made that monster run to take that 118-116 lead late in the game. So Clingan played an integral part to that climbing out of that hole and coming back in this one. Portland did crash the offensive boards. It's something Billy Donovan pointed to in his post-game presser that I listened to. They dominated in the fourth quarter and were just bullying the Bulls on the offensive boards. Portland would have 26 offensive rebounds and 38 second-chance points. Now, that's something any NBA coach would want to clean up. You don't want to give NBA ball clubs second chance points at that magnitude. 38 of them is quite a few there. So something the Bulls will try and clean up ahead of the NBA Cup matchup Friday against the Miami Heat, another hot team coming into United Center. I wanted to close today's show just kind of looking at what's ahead and then talking about Nikola Vucevic. I mean, this guy was a guy I've been talking about since the start of the show back in May. You would think he would be talked about in trade rumors and heading into this year's deadline. Now, we're still a far way away from February, but things are going pretty well for him early on in this season. He's showing why he's a staple for this Bulls team and a leader at that. He received praise post-game for his big shot, showing why he's still one of the clear-cut leaders of this ball club, a guy that players look to knock down that big shot. Kobe White spoke post-game on Nikola Vucevic saying, quote, "He's our connector. He's our leader. He makes big-time plays. He's super important to what we do. We rely on him. He has a high IQ and a good feel for the game. He's so dangerous. He can roll. He can pop. He's a really, really good basketball player." None other than Kobe White stating that. Arguably the Bulls, one of the Bulls' biggest players as well, the second biggest leader on this team. I would argue maybe he is the biggest guy complimenting Vooch in this situation, finding him for that big shot for this Bulls team to carry momentum into this weekend. Vooch would go on to say, quote, "Kobe made a great play and I just felt confident in my shot." Now, look at this is a guy in Utah who missed that game-tying three. It does not deter him to take those big shots. He continues to come back and knock those big shots down. He made one in Denver to close that game out and make that lead insurmountable late. And then this one, obviously, the game winner. The Cardiac Bulls do it again. It's a really fun group, a really good ball club to watch down the stretch in close games. Looking at what's next up for the Bulls, off day on Thursday, and then the third NBA Cup night at the United Center versus the Miami Heat. The Bulls are 1-1 so far in group play in the NBA Cup, so there's big implications Friday night. Miami comes in 9-6 and winners of two straight, coming off a big victory over the Golden State Warriors, a very shorthanded Golden State Warriors at that. And also to mention, speaking of being shorthanded, there was a big factor in this one for the Blazers. Now, it came down to the wire. It really shouldn't have, the Bulls with their big lead, but the Blazers were without 7 guys, including, guys like Damian Lillard. So Blazers were shorthanded in themselves, but that is a dangerous team nonetheless. They continue to look better and better. Back to last episode, I think it's promising to see this Blazers team get out of the lottery and continue to play good basketball. Hopefully, they can string some things together now for the rest of the year so that the Bulls can get that first rounder as soon as this next year. So, I think it's going to be a fun weekend for the Bulls. Saturday night, the second of a back-to-back versus the lowly Washington Wizards. They're in the cellar of the league standings at the moment, are 1-13. They've lost 12 in a row. So, some dark times for them. I know the Pacers just got their second win of the year. The Pelicans are really struggling, but the Wizards are the worst team in the league. So they come into United Center even though it's a back-to-back, you couldn't ask for a better matchup in the second of a back-to-back on Saturday. What's also exciting, it's the Bulls Ring of Honor night Saturday, so they'll honor members of the Bulls Ring of Honor, and that should be electric. I know Neil Funk is going into the Ring of Honor Saturday, so congrats to him. A big moment for him. He was a staple for the Chicago Bulls broadcasting crew for a long, long time. I know Stacey King is going to be excited about that one. I grew up watching Neil Funk and hearing his exotic and crazy calls on the mic throughout the years was really fun to watch, particularly during the Derrick Rose years. Neil Funk, when you remember D. Rose in the run that he had, you remember Neil Funk on the local broadcasts and how electric him and Stacey King used to be on the mic. So excited for that and the Ring of Honor night. But first, we got that NBA Cup big game Friday against a hot Miami Heat team coming in. So look to get Trey Jones back and look to continue to play good basketball and use the off day to kind of get themselves ready for a big couple of games this weekend. So anyway, want to thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Bulls Latest. Let me know what you think of that buzzer beater. I know Bulls fans got to be excited out there. The Bulls continue to come up big in clutch games. So I want to thank you guys for joining me today on another episode of Bulls Latest, and we will see you guys next time.